Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm going to talk about the next in my Gregory Benford series, his second story in my bibliography titled Representative from Earth. Representative from Earth is a short story that was published in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction in January of 1966. And by the way, the only way you're going to get a hold of this story is in the actual issue. And there isn't even a PDF online of this at all, probably due to copyright issues. Gregory Benford's work for sure is copyrighted. Isaac Asimov's work for sure is copyrighted. So this issue is not something that can legally be put online as a PDF, and it is not. So you have, and Representative from Earth, as far as I can tell, has never been published in any other collections by Benford or anthologies or anything like that. So if you want to read the story, you got to track down this physical issue of Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. And it's an okay cover by Jack Gaughan. Jack Gaughan, I mean, I don't know how well you can see that. This cover has nothing to do with Representative from Earth. It has to do with the Robert F. Young story, which I'm looking forward to reading sometime because what I've read of Young, I really like his work. But, okay, back to the Jack Gaughan. This cover, I mean, if you look at this, at the illustration on the cover of this, the figures are very stiffly drawn. They don't come across as professional drawing of figures. Now, Gaughan could draw and he could paint, and he did some absolutely amazing illustrations. He really did. He did some mind-blowing illustrations, but so much of the time, and I think it's because he was everywhere from the 1960s through the 70s into the 80s. Jack Gaughan was everywhere. He published so much illustration in the science fiction magazines and for science fiction books. He did a lot of work for Dawn in the 70s. Just a huge number of illustrations. And that's probably why, in my estimation, so much of his work is of a lesser quality. If you look at the work from the same time period by artists like Ed Emshwiller or John Schoenherr, Virgil Finlay, I mean, they were doing a lot of work also, but their figures were not so stiff. And their colors, I mean, I do not like the colors chosen for this painting. Um, let's just do a big wash of shit brown across the cover and then throw a figure against it. No, not very attractive. So not really one of my favorite artists, although sometimes he did do works that blew my mind. Most of the time, though, I just don't care for his work. But this is a good issue with, Robert F. Young and Margaret St. Clair, Ron Goulart, and of course Gregory Benford's Representative from Earth to get back on track. Like I say, it's his second story. His first story was a contest winner for the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, so he came back with another. It's a short story, not the longest short story, but not short enough to be called flash fiction. In the story, a guy named John Bradley is out in space flying a spaceship, and he meets up with some aliens. And he knew he was going to meet up with these aliens, and these aliens say that they wanted to meet him because they want to test him. And so John Bradley is going to be tested by the aliens to determine how fit mankind is for becoming part of galactic civilization. So no pressure. Um, won't spoil the end of the story. Bit of a twist, kind of funny. It's a pretty good story. Not a great story, but it's well done. It's a well done little story, is how I characterize this, with a humorous twist that is kind of typical for 1960s. Say no more than that. Um, like I say, a little bit hard to find the story. I would only say it's worth the pursuit if you really love Gregory Benford's work. Then you have to find it. Otherwise, everybody else, I think, can live their lives just fine without reading this one. It's fun, but it's not anything great. But it still shows Bedford as being an excellent writer early on, and he can count on good things to come from him down the road. So that's representative from Earth. Have you ever been lucky enough to read it? Then leave your comments. What do you think of this story? Don't spoil the ending, but put it in the comments section. Please like the video, subscribe to our channel, come on back for more. The next Gregory Benford will be titled Flat Top. And a little bit about what I'm thinking about right now. I'm looking at my YouTube numbers. More recent books and authors, especially stuff that's really current, that lots of people on BookTube are doing reviews of. I'm not getting good numbers on them. Especially the latest one we put up. I'm looking at the numbers the last couple of days that it's been up. Don't Let the Forest In. And it's only got 8 views. It's really doing really bad. And yet this is this is in the Goodreads. Um, it's one of the finalists for Goodreads for fantasy, for the Goodreads Choice Awards, I believe they're called right now. So major book out, guys, and nobody's watching this video. So that's not to say there aren't people out there that think highly of this book, but that group of people is not watching Telltale Books. And the people that are watching Telltale Books are going, "Don't Let the Forest In." No, that's not. I don't want to hear about that. And they're going for the other stuff. The videos that are doing best are my magazine reviews, and there I'm doing really well with current magazine reviews. Like I've done a couple of fairly recent issues of Asimov's and Analog, and I did one of fantasy and science fiction, and recently put up Galaxy, and coming up very shortly is my review of the 60th anniversary issue for New Worlds. And I'm handling that one differently, breaking a lot of the stories out so that I can talk a little bit more about each of the stories if the stories are significant. I'm also going back, I went all the way back to the beginnings of Speculative Fiction magazine with the first issue of Weird Tales. So far, I've done the first and second issue. I'm currently starting to read the third issue of Weird Tales and loving it. And I already found a connection to some other stuff. And my Edmund Hamilton videos I put up Monster God of Mammoth, which was a Weird Tales story a little later on in 1926. And that got really high, relatively high number of views for my videos. Um, so people are liking that the old stuff, the stuff from the very early pulp days, and they're especially liking the ones where I go through whole magazines. So I'm going to focus a little more on that, especially since there's a lot of what I'm doing, like this Gregory Benford story is in Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction from the 1960s. Eventually, I hope I'll get there and talk about the rest of that issue, but I've already talked about Representative of Earth or From Earth, you know, and that's going to be a problem going through magazines, especially in the 1940s. I'm going to get there and go, well, 3/4 of this magazine I've already done videos on. So I kind of want to go through the magazines and get caught up on those authors. And so that means the more recent authors, I'm probably going to slow down. Ones that I won't slow down are the ones that have been doing really well, like J.G. Ballard and Harlan Ellison in particular. Those have been getting me good numbers of views. I'm going to keep going on those. But something like Gregory Benford, I'm probably going to slow way down, throttle him way down. I'll still do stories of his before I reach them in the magazines, because most of his work is going to be many years down the road after I'm dead before I would get to it if I really, really stick to that. So I'll still do some of them, but I'm going to throttle back on those authors and not do as many of their stuff, and throttle up on those magazines and try to get through the magazine. I'm also going to try to focus on the current magazines because those seem to be popular too. So I'm going to try and get through those. A lot of them I haven't been getting time to even read them, much less report on them. But I'm going to try and get into those and report on those more because that seems to be what you guys like. So a little bit of change to the way I'm doing things. It's going to affect mostly just the videos I do by myself, not so much the ones I do with Emily. I also do want to cover more because it was Telltale's mission to dig into the past, the forgotten classics, and talk about those more. And we started out doing stuff like Herland and the Purple Cloud, and When the Sleeper Wakes. And I want to get more into that much, much older work. Partly because there's a lot of the lesser known works back then that I've never read. And partly because I ran into a situation with my next Edmund Hamilton story where because at the same time I was starting the 3rd issue of Weird Tales, I saw a connection between a story in that issue of Weird Tales and Across Space by Edmund Hamilton, which was published in a 1926 issue of Weird Tales. And seems to be a clear connection between the two stories, but the earlier story also has a clear connection back to Fu Manchu. And I'm seeing that and going, well, I've never read Fu Manchu, but what little I know about Fu Manchu, it looks like, yeah, Sax Rohmer was an influence over all this. So I want to go back and catch authors like that I've never read. I haven't read a whole lot of William Hope Hodgson. I haven't read any Sax Rohmer. I've never read H. Rider Haggard. I mean, I want to cover these authors too and get through some of that before I start getting into too much of the newest authors. Because I'm just seeing connections. I'm seeing a path. I'm seeing these connections in a path, and yet I don't have enough information about the earliest stuff to be able to really formulate what's going through my mind with those connections and talk about it here. I want to be able to talk about it more here. So that's what I'm planning for the future here. You can count on seeing more of that. So you'll still see, like I say, you'll still see authors like Ballard, Ellison, Stephen King. You'll see them a lot. And I'll still do Gregory Benford. Just, it may be a while before I get to Flat Top, because I'm going to be focusing on these old Weird Tales issues and stuff like that. So I hope you like that plan, and I hope you'll come back, or when I finally do get to Flat Top and all of the other Weird Tales and other magazines and stories and authors that I discuss here on Telltale Books.